Today I'm making the Praetorian Guard helmet. For this build, I used EVA foam, craft foam, coffee foam, putty, super glue, contact cement, plastidip, a sharpening stone, modified clone DNA, paint, cutting tools, sanding tools, safety gear, scissors, razor pens, and a box cutter. Okay. Pretty much all of the Star Wars bad guys have the same helmet dome shape, so if you've seen any of my other Stormtrooper builds, then you can go ahead and skip to this time code right here. For all you first timers, here we go! First I traced a helmet dome template onto a sheet of EVA foam floor mat. I made this dome template years ago and have been refining it ever since. There's a link to it in the video description down below, along with a complete template, which I developed over the course of this build. I flipped the shapes to get the reverse side. Sometimes I'll connect the two halves in the middle or in the front just to help hide the seam where it's going to be most visible, but sometimes that can make gluing a little bit more difficult, and the seam is going to be covered up on this particular helmet anyway, so I put some separation between the two. As I trace, I'm making sure to get all the registration marks so that I can line up the pieces later, and I'm labeling them front, back, left, and right just to prevent further confusion. Definitely made two left sides before. Next, I cut out the pieces with the box cutter. Make sure to cut with the blade angled straight up and down, otherwise you'll get a ridge in your armor, which can be useful if you're making medieval armor or something highly stylized, but sci-fi, not so much. They actually make a tool for that now, to hold the blade straight up and down. It's like a handle with a razor blade on it. The EVA foam will dull out your blade, so you'll have to continually sharpen it with a knife sharpener. I switched to scissors for some of the simpler cuts, and then finished them off with a work knife. I also made side pieces, then I heat formed them with a heat gun, not a hairdryer. A heat gun. Your hairdryer can't do this. In fact, it'll burn the foam if you hold it over the same spot long enough, which is why I do most of the heating up on the pattern side, which is going to end up on the inside when the helmet's done. Then I manipulated the foam manually until it was curved slightly, and then so that it would retain its curve, I set it inside a bowl while it cooled. Make sure you use Darth Vader's helmet as a heat former for this step. That's the only way it'll work. Once all the pieces were heat formed, I glued them together with contact cement. The fumes from this stuff aren't great to breathe, so I'm doing this in an open garage on a windy day. That wasn't by choice, just happened to be windy that particular day, which worked out well. You can't just apply the glue to the foam and then immediately stick it together. There's a 12 to 14 minute wait time. Contact cement is a bit temperamental, and it's something that has to be done in stages. But for the longevity of a prop that's probably going to bend over time, suffer some kind of stress, it's really the best glue. When the glue had become tacky, I attached the pieces. Then I applied the glue to the center seam, and when the glue had dried, I attached the two halves to form a dome. Then I cut a rectangle from a sheet of EVA foam to form the sides and back of the helmet. I sanded the rough edges on my belt sander. Then I heat formed it and glued it to the dome with more contact cement. It's pretty much self-explanatory. There's not much more for me to say about it that I haven't said already. To keep the pieces from separating while they dried, I weighed them down with a tape spool. It was closer than my machinist blocks. Then I let it sit overnight to air out. Next, I cut the circular wall down to size because there's an indentation that goes from just below the cheekbones in the front all the way around the outside of the helmet. It's subtle, during a fight scene, kind of blends in, but it is there. Then I added the cheekbone plates. Those are going to get cut down quite a bit as I figure this out. Luckily, you won't have to deal with that because they have to match the curvature of the helmet wall. Then I widened the visor opening for added visibility. Next, I cut a long tapered piece of scrap foam for the nose guard, and I glued it on with super glue. This is made out of the same 3/8 inch floor mat foam as the rest of the helmet, but it will need to be the same height as the dorsal ridge, so I cut an identical piece of 2mm foam to go on top of it. Next, I cut another length of floor mat foam, which will eventually go inside the helmet to form the bottom of the trench that goes around the circumference of the helmet. I heat formed it into a curved shape and placed it into a concrete form tube. This is barely necessary. Honestly, I just think it helps the helmet retain a shape. You could get away with not heat forming this, but I have the tools. Why not use them, Then I glued it in with hot glue. This seam has virtually no stress on it, so I can get away with hot glue right here. Actually, I think I used all 3 different glues on this build. Nice. I glued the dorsal strip to the nose and then followed through across the top. I love when the design of the helmet deliberately covers a seam. It saves me so much time and money on putty later. Well, I don't know about money, but time for sure. Time is money. Next, for the brim, I cut a curved strip. This video is brought to you by Cheerios. If they want to send me money, sure, go for it. Hit me up, Cheerios. See, that That's why I completely redo the templates before I scan them in. Otherwise, it'd just be a mess of Sharpie marker on Cheerio boxes. I don't want you guys to waste your ink on that. I cut the inner curve at an angle so that it would align flush with the edge of the helmet. I heat formed it a little bit with the heat gun and rolled it up. I stuck it into the helmet as it cooled. When it cooled, I attached it to the outside of the helmet with super glue. The front is supposed to angle downward, so I made those mandible pieces, separately. Those also were cut with slanted edges, because they have to sit at an angle as well. I glued them on, one on either side. Next, I made the earpieces. These are the vestiges of the rangefinder mount. It's heavily implied that this is sort of a combination of the Mandalorian armor and the Stormtrooper armor. These actually turned out to be too small, so I made longer ones. Now they have to be flush with the trench edge at the bottom, so I made sure to cut the outer edge at a slant, or bevel, to keep in line with the design from the show. Then I glued them to either side, again covering a seam. I love it. Next, I cut and attached a small waning moon, waxing moon, I always forget the difference. Crescent, not quite crescent, banana shape, sure. For the panel below the cheekbone, I cut this piece from 4mm craft foam this time because it's an incredibly tight space. I mean, you could get away with the regular floor mat foam, but I've got so much scrap left over from other projects that at this point it's like, why am I making my life difficult, you know? I thought that the brim was flaring out a bit too much, so I trimmed it down to size and translated that change to my templates. And that's really it for the structural stuff. You'll notice that I puttied and spot sanded certain areas just to erase the seams and imperfections. I did that using DAP Alex Fast Dry and my belt sander, as well as a rotary tool for some of the hard to get spaces. I've also temporarily inserted a cardboard oval spacer in there just so that it would hold its shape while I worked on it. It will also help to keep it steady on the painting stand. Before painting, I did a quick pass with the heat gun. This creates a seal almost like a primer, which is going to cut down on the number of paint layers that I'll have to do. Then I painted it with white house paint. Normally I'll do a black base coat because I make a lot of metallic helmets. Well, helmets that are supposed to look metallic. But these are supposed to have a very solid, vibrant final top coat of red. So, in order to get that to pop, I used white. It's really gotta be vibrant. This took 2 coats of primer. After allowing time for it to fully dry, I painted it blood red with the blood of my enemies. There's just enough to fill a rattle can, and not a drop more. Well, I don't know, maybe after this video. Every YouTube video is bound to anger somebody. So the Praetorian Guard were one of my favorite parts of the new trilogy. That scene just blew me away. But I was always a little sad at the conclusion of their story. Oh my eye, I'm not supposed to get lightsabers in it! Because I knew it meant that we never see them again. And I have never been so happy to be wrong in my entire life. I can't wait to see where their story goes from here. Oh, who you think they're gonna fight? Let me know in comments below. It's gonna be Mando. It's gonna be Mando. Hopefully we get multiple fights, you know, before the conclusion of the show. Just saying. While the red coat dried, I worked on the visor. I've done this many ways before. Soda bottle and nightshade spray paint, pop bottle and nightshade spray paint, you know, for all you savages in the Midwest, tinted office folders for all you office drones, and tinted welding masks for all you working class drones. Oh, what's this? It's an angry mob forming outside my door. Don't shoot the messenger. Or do, I don't care, I got me some Beskar now. Although the joints are exposed. Yeah, that's always bothered me. It's not an Iron Man suit. Just aim for the joints. Sure is convenient how all the blaster bolts always hit center mass. They gotta retrain those stormtroopers. That should be day 1 of stormtrooper training. No. That should be day 2. Day 1 should be aim. Aim! By the maker, aim. What was I doing? Oh, right. And that was it. And that's how to make a Praetorian Guard helmet. Now I can kill a Mandalorian and eat its heart with just a splash of Worcestershire. What's your favorite trooper helmet? Let me know in comments below. This video is brought to you by my patrons who make these videos possible. If you're interested in joining them and supporting the channel, you can check out the links in the description down below. Anything pledged goes towards improving video quality, shop equipment, and allows me to put together bigger and more exciting projects for you to enjoy. Be sure to hit that bell icon to be notified of future builds, and in the meantime, you can check out some of my past builds right here. And let me know what your favorite Star Wars helmet is in comments down below. Alright, happy crafting. See you later.